Hey, welcome back, Brew Crew. Welcome to another episode of Shedding Your Skin. Hey, I did it right. I didn't call it Sunday Snake Chat again. So sweet, good on me. Big shout out to Terrence at Keys Constrictors. I had a blast last night on his 2K giveaway. I won a snake from Malaysia with Constrictors, so I'm really happy. But huge shout out to everybody that stayed the whole time. There were over 100 people in there in the chat, and that's awesome. Thanks to everybody that gave away animals in that. It was sweet. I had a blast. I'm super tired because we were up really, really late. All right, that aside, go support US ARC. They fight for our rights as reptile keepers. Anyway, without further ado, let's shout out people in the chat. What's good, Eric? Thanks for being first. I'm pretty sure you might have just had this open all day, waiting for it to say first. What's good, John from Inquiline? Gage, thanks for tuning in. Fred and AJ. Had a blast with you guys last week. And everybody watching, make sure to check them out tomorrow at 4 o'clock for their show on their channel. I'm sure they're giving away some pretty cool stuff, some credits, maybe a snake. Who knows? All right, who else do we got? TK, Aaron, my super classic super supporter. Thank you for joining. Eric, thanks for tuning in. All right, that's everybody that's in the chat. If I missed you, I'm sorry, but without further ado, let's get to our guest from over across the pond. It's Big Mike from 21st Century Reptiles.
Hey, what's up, Ken?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for coming on. I know we got a time difference. It's 9 o'clock over there for you. So
that's all good. It's nothing. 9 o'clock is nothing for me, Ken.
Right. I mean, you have to get accustomed to it because next week you got to stay up pretty late, huh?
Well, I'm trying to decide whether I'm gonna have a little nap and then get up, or try to be a bit more clever about how I sleep on Friday night, because my problem is that, which is why I was missing last Sunday from Fred and AJ's show, is because my problem is that I won't sleep enough on Friday night, then I won't sleep enough on Saturday night, and if I make it through them, then I crash on Sunday, and sometimes I crash on Saturday and then I'm good for Sunday, and it just depends on kind of how much sleep I do and don't get. So I don't know. I think if I'm more if I go to bed on Friday night and stay in bed and not end up Ken, I'm an older guy, so older guys will tell you that you have to get up in the middle of the night to do a wee, right? So my problem is I'll get up to do a wee, and then I'll think, oh, let me just see what's going on online. And then basically before you know it, I'm either watching a live, or somebody sent me a link for a backstage, and I'm sitting in the backstage, and then I don't bother to go back to sleep again, which is kind of almost what happened this morning. I got up, ended up sitting in, hair down, watching the races for about an hour, and then went back to sleep for 2 hours, and then got back up again, and by 6 o'clock was back up watching the end of hair down, and already in a backstage with some guys. So yeah. I don't rest enough. But it's all good. I enjoy it.
Yeah. I'm definitely happy that we worked something out between our group to put me on Saturday at this time, because it gives me Sunday to relax. And before, it was my live was at around dinner time, which stunk for me, and then I was competing with Fred and AJ for views, and then I had a hard 8 o'clock stop because I ran up against Jeremy Warfel. But I'm happy that this new arrangements worked out. I got to change the name of the show, and it gives me the opportunity to go on.
I think Saturday suits you as well, Kemp, because firstly, obviously, during the week the shows should start a little bit later because people are at work during the day, right? But it's Saturday, so I mean, we know already that Nicole, shout to Nicole, runs a show at 1 o'clock. Yeah, on a
And
Saturday.
thanks for the shout out today, Nicole. If you're watching, I know you were up late too, so maybe you're napping.
So, the shows start earlier on a weekend because it's the weekend. People are available at different times. I think that the Saturday suits you because, not that it would bother me, but you know that some guests from overseas, especially your Sunday time you had, because your Sunday time was later than this, right?
Yep,
It
yep,
wasn't. It wasn't this time. It was later than this.
yep. It was 2.5 hours later. So that,
Right.
if I had you on, or Gavin or anybody else from
Right. It would
across
be
the pond, it
touching
would suck for them.
midnight. It would be touching close to midnight.
Right, right. All right, so we sort of skipped some of my general intro questions because we got off on a tangent because we're familiar with each other, and sometimes that happens. So, Mike, give a brief introduction. Tell everybody who might not know you about yourself, how long you've been keeping reptiles, that sort of thing.
So my name is Mike. I'm from the UK. Uh, I've been keeping reptiles for I think about 8 or 9 years. Would be the first corn snake and bearded dragon, and then we progressed onto ball pythons in 2017. I've hatched out bearded dragons, leopard geckos, crested geckos, corn snakes. I still got my corns, but I don't breed them anymore. And I don't have any of the other reptiles, and I just predominantly breed ball pythons now. So that's it. This is my 5th breeding season that I'm in now. Hoping for another bumper season and see what the future holds. That's it, really.
Nice, nice. So with all those species you mentioned, what was the easiest to keep husbandry wise and to breed?
So husbandry wise and stuff, and easy to look after, it's always going to be the snakes because uh, bearded dragons are the cutest and the funniest because you can really interact with bearded dragons. I love my beardies. Uh, they had so much character and they were so much fun. Uh, Leopard geckos are quite feisty little things when they're babies, when they scream at you. If you've hatched out leopard geckos, you'll know what I mean. That baby leopard geckos scream at you. It's hilarious. That they're quite aggressive when they get out of the egg and they literally screech. It's quite amusing. And crested geckos are an absolute nightmare because you've got to walk around them like you've got cotton wool under your feet. And if you say boo too loudly, they get scared. So, and they're very jumpy and fast and delicate animals, But yeah, they've all got their pros and cons. I would say that the easiest is definitely the snakes, but the most fun would probably be the beardies and the baby leopard geckos.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I mean, I have all the species that you mentioned. Aside, I don't have any corn snakes right now or any colubrids. But yeah, my bearded dragons, I have 3 of them, one male and 2 females, and they all have their own little distinct personalities. The male, I've
Right.
had the
You
longest.
know exactly what I mean when I say to you that, they have personalities. They're brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, my male is hilarious. He'll puff up at me for no reason. I've had him for 3-4 years at this point. But he'll act all tough, and then he's like, "Oh, okay, we're coming out now. We're gonna play and hang out." And the girls are more relaxed, and I keep them separate so that hopefully the male doesn't get in breeding mode, and he never comes over
Well,
here.
I mean, it's quite interesting. I noticed we brought a male into the room, just into the room, purely by necessity that we went to look at an animal that was being advertised as a female. When we got there, it was a male, but the condition it was being. Hey Nicole, we were just
Hey,
talking
Nicole.
about you.
Hey, thanks for the shout out.
Um, when we got there, me and my son. This was in the early days, when my son was literally like my right hand man when we started this.
Mhm.
The animal was a male, not a female, but they were keeping it in such a poor way that I couldn't leave it there. So I bought it anyway, and I brought it home, and I kept it for a couple of months to get it nice and how it should be, and then I moved it on again. But for the time I had it in the room, my male bearded dragon was just losing the plot on a daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean they're definitely interesting. I mean they're as far as like personality goes of animals I keep, they're my favorite. The boa probably hands down. I hate, but
Are you planning to hatch out any bearded dragons?
so no, I was, but I ran into an issue. My male has no redeeming genetics uh, at all, and the females have some recessive, some stuff that I could work with, but I generally be making all hets and pause hets, which everything would be normal. There's no really great color lines that I have, so for me, it's not worth it. The one next to me, the translucent pause hypo pod, whatever she is, she's het for Whitblitz. There's a couple things in there. She is small. She got dwarfed because she got out competed by her sibling. Because I had them in a 40 when they were growing up, and I didn't split them soon enough. So she's probably just going to be a pet only. The hypo het trans het Whitblit possible het zero. She might go up to my buddy to breed because he has other hets that'll work. So he can deal with all the babies and he can have her for a season. So
They're the best babies as well, because even leopard gecko babies, they can be quite sort of you have to be delicate with them as well. At least with a leopard gecko baby, the tail will grow back, but you have to be quite. But the bearded dragon babies, I used to keep mine about 7 foot in the air, and I'd open the thing to change their salad, and they'd leap out of the thing and just fall on the floor and start running, and I'd be down the ladder trying to chase them across the room. They were hilarious.
yeah. I remember having to put my. We were trying to. So I have a colony of leopard geckos that have grown up together. So I knew that the genders of two of them, but there was another one that I was trying to figure out what it was, and my buddy was over here, and we're trying to not have it drop its tail and figure out what it is, and it's a he. We figured out and just flies out of my buddy's hands, running around. I have to put the dog away, and then the lizards like hiding behind stuff. Oh my god, that was a nightmare. We had to rip the whole room apart to get the little
So
thing.
are you expecting to get some eggs this season from your
Um,
leopard geckos?
so last year I had one that was a slug. The year before I had another. She keeps on slugging out, so if I see the eggs and I catch them in time, I'll hatch them out. Because
So
decent genetic.
normally it would be because okay, even my best leopard gecko breeders that bred for me year on year, in the first clutch that they laid, they would either just lay one or they might lay two, but they probably wouldn't go full term. They'd go moldy.
Yeah,
One might be a real slug. The other one will look like an egg. It wouldn't go full term. Um, but to be honest, I'd end up with girls that would give me easily maybe 12 clutches in a year. They just keep producing, not 12, maybe 10 clutches. So 20 eggs per season, because they just keep producing them like
right.
that. Once you get them, but you've got to keep the male in. or you got to keep putting the male in, depending on how you want to do it. I know people that I've been told by people, oh no, you can't leave the leopard geckos together because they're gonna fight, and I'm like, well, really? Like, well, my females, the only thing I've ever found is that females that are raised solitary sometimes don't go well together to be put together when they've been raised solitary. I
Yeah, yeah,
found that I found that females that were raised in a colony were fine to live in a colony as adults.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
and
yeah.
and I found that males, regardless of anything, you need to keep them apart. Yeah. And then I personally would put my male in with my female the end of January, middle of February, and just leave him in there. And if he had more than one female to go to, I would just rotate him through his females and just leave him in there the whole way through the summer. And come around September time, I'd take him out, and then I'd rest him right through till January and then start his process again. And in the meantime, even after you remove him, she's retaining X amount of sperm, and she's going to drop another 2 clutches, 3
Right.
clutches, maybe anyway.
Yeah, so mine all grew up together for the most part. So I tried separating them because I have space in the hatchling rack. I was like, okay, I'm going to separate them. Maybe I'll have better luck breeding them. And then it didn't really work out. They were like, they thrive better together. So I'm just going to keep them together. And if I get eggs, I get eggs. If not, they're cool pets.
So if you've got one male and a couple of females, the only thing I'd tell you to do is just for a few months a year, just remove the males so that the girls have a chance to know that the season's over, and
Right.
then they'll eat and build up their fat supply, and their tail will start to get more chubby again. If you're really, really giving them good calcium, they'll start to develop like calcium lumps behind the ears and stuff like that,
Yeah. But, these things are still pets for me for a lot of the
Oh,
species.
I used to love my leopard geckos and stuff like that, Ken. That's the truth. That me and my son were just talking about it recently. That he said to me, "Oh, Dad, I miss the bearded dragons," and he sent me a video of the leopard geckos that he was holding some one day, and I told him, "Oh, I really miss these a lot, son. And I really miss the leopard geckos a lot."
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's gonna. How do I keep these animals that I have as pets while growing the ball pythons? Because that's gonna
Well,
take a lot more space, and lizards take up. They have bigger enclosures than a tub for a
it's
ball python. So it's like, where do I put them so I don't hinder myself as I grow out?
well,
Growing ball
you
pythons.
Ken, that when you keep bearded dragons, when you keep leopard geckos, you need to be worrying about things like salad for the bearded dragons, insects for both of these species, that these things need more regular care. You know, I look at my ball pythons basically near enough every day, but that's through choice, right, Ken?
Yeah,
That's through choice. You and I know that some people don't look at their animals every day. And here's the truth, you don't actually need to. My logic is that if I'm tending to them on a daily basis, they never ever need a lot of work because it's like if you dig over a piece of ground and you don't pull out the weeds as they come, one day you're going to have to pull out a lot of weeds, right? So I tend to be that guy that is pulling out the weeds every day, in the sense of I would rather just open the tubs every day and look at my animals. But I also know that if something's going on and I don't want to or can't look in there for 2 days, nothing's going to happen, right, Ken?
Yeah.
Nothing's going to happen. But if you've got bearded dragons and leopard geckos, after 2 days, you'd be like, oh, I need to look in there today. I can't leave it one more because that's
right.
like.
Right. You need bugs, salad, something, because they got to eat because their metabolism's different than, a snake. So
Right.
daily.
They need that care and attention. And that was, to be honest, why I got out of all of those animals, is because as my ball python collection started to grow and it was requiring more and more attention, then the choice was to either not make my collection as big, don't give my collection the attention I wanted to, or move the lizards on and focus,
Yep. Yeah, and that makes sense. I breed my own rats, so that's a daily pain in the butt anyway. So for me, vacationing kind of stinks. If I'm gone for more than 3 days, not only do I have to find somebody to watch my dog, I have to have somebody come over here, feed all the lizards, and make sure the rats have water and food. And that's I have to make some trades with some friends to sort of make that happen. Whereas ball pythons, if I go on vacation, I can leave a whole week, and as long as I can monitor the thermostat's on, they're fine, and they have water before I leave. Fine. So
people said to me, "Oh, what are you going to do when you go to the States in October?" And I'm like, "Well, I'll be leaving on a Thursday, and I'll be coming back on a Monday. I normally feed on a Sunday, so I'll just feed on the Monday instead when I get back, and I'll check very late on Wednesday night or very early on Thursday morning before I go, and they're all, like you say, they'll all have water. And what's the worst thing that I'm going to come back to is a poop, a spilled water bowl here and there. It's no drama,
Right. Whereas some of the other species that they knock their water over, they don't have any. That's an issue.
And you couldn't leave a bearded dragon from Thursday morning to Monday late afternoon, early evening. It wouldn't be fair. It would need some food. It would need some salad. The leopard gecko would need some food.
Yeah. So I luck out. I breed my own dubia roaches. So if I know I'm going to be gone or unable to, give them everything they need for like a day or two, I have so many dried out roaches in there that I can make a sort of pre-mix type food for them. With stuff I have some rapashi, so I can make this gel stuff that has dubia, salad, and everything they need. It sort of can last an extra day, but I still don't like doing that.
Well, I don't know. My leopard geckos would only eat live food. I never used to have my crested geckos would eat that. They would eat Pangea. They would eat Pangea, that crested gecko diet, and you'd have to periodically mix that with water and put it in there and remove it after 24 hours.
Yeah, or get moldy or bugs. Yeah, that stuff.
And boring, and miss them, and they're the hardest work of all, the crested geckos. Yeah, mixing that Pangea, misting them.
Yep. Yeah, mine's right over here in this enclosure, and it stinks because it's right, like I have gas heat. So my place gets extremely dry in this time of year, so I'm constantly misting just about everything, to make sure keep my humidity in the right level so I get nice sheds and all that stuff. But I'm about to put this crested gecko somewhere else where it's not near my heating vent and just drying out, because I guess
drying out constantly.
Yeah, I got this thing. So if you have a lot of animals, this works a hell of a lot better than your Windex bottle. So you can pump it and You just spray. So I mean that's what I used to do all my cocoa and substrate in all these enclosures where humidity's a
To be
thing.
honest, Ken, I've still got one of those. That's the same thing I still use with the pump up that I still have in my room for my ball pythons, that if I see an animal that's in shed, I'll pick up my misting bottle and I'll just spray a little bit over where the hot spot is.
Yep.
Because that if you just miss the area where the hot spot is and the cocoa's dry already, that will evaporate quite quickly and then cause a humidity spike that is going to help the animal to have a better shed. So, I still use my spray bottle today, even though I have no lizards anymore.
Yeah, I mean it definitely helps. Especially if your cocoa is getting dry, or like you said, a snake's in blue, and you need,
Well,
maybe you have a dryer.
I keep my cocoa dry anyway, Kent. So the idea is that I want it dry, and I only want it to be damp in the hot spot, so that it can evaporate and cause a humidity when the animal is going into shed. I don't see a requirement for me to keep the cocoa damp, because this is in my opinion, like a misconception. Humidity is moisture in the air. Yeah,
Right.
humidity is caused by the evaporation of water, is how we're trying to do it, is the evaporation. But we don't need to make the whole cocoa dry, just make the bit in the back a little wet. You can just make the little bit in the back wet, because depending on what you're running as your ambient, having wet cocoa and a low ambient, it's a
Yeah.
recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I ran into, and I'm still running into this issue of trying to get the humidity correct in my hatchling rack. So I have soldered air holes in all my tubs, but it's still wet. So I'm trying to get more airflow in there. And I'm constantly changing out the substrate, which is costing me money.
Yeah, that's what you have to do. You have to constantly change out the substrate, and give them as tall a water bowl as you can, and instead of filling up the water bowl, just give them half a bowl,
Yeah.
and go back and check them more. I I don't ever really fill up anybody's water bowl to the top, because I just see that as a recipe for spilled water.
Right.
Again, like I told you, I'll go into my room on a daily basis and check my animals. So for me, I would rather give the animal a third to a half of a bowl of water, and knowing that I'm going to be in there tomorrow if you got really thirsty and you drank it all, which you're not going to, because you were never deprived of water, so you're never that thirsty. The
Right.
only time I've ever seen an animal do that is when I've bought an animal here that wasn't mine, and you give it water and the water's gone by the next day, and the guy wasn't giving it water. Oh, Ken's gone.
No, I'm here. I just didn't want to pour my water on on camera.
No worries. So yeah, it's I forgot what I was talking about, Ken.
We were talking about water. And
Oh yeah. So for me, I would rather just not have the water bowl that full. I would rather have it a little bit lower, and just top it up
yeah,
periodically. Yeah, and then that
yeah,
way
that
you
makes sense.
keep the drain drier anyway, because there's going to be less water for them to spill, right?
Yeah, and yeah, Ken, I agree with you 100% on the sleep schedule. Mike and I were talking about that earlier backstage. But yeah, with it's breeding season, so our females are bowl wrapping. So I mean, that full big water, they knock that over. You could have a mess depending on what kind of substrate you have. If you have paper, that's a nightmare.
Oh, you're in trouble. You're in
So
trouble.
I
Well,
used
well, I've changed my stuff up quite recently, and I've recently gone back to a mix of two substrains rather than how I've been running for the last, I don't know, 4 years. I reckon for the last 4 years I've been using cocoa. Dogs
yeah,
having fun there.
the dog got the squeaky, so I'm trying to steal it from her. I used to keep everything on paper and newspaper. So if you have a white snake, that stinks because they end up with ink on them. Um, and
Yeah,
you constantly
paper
clean them.
paper again requires constant attention. Keeping ball pythons on paper is like keeping crested geckos in the sense of if you keep ball pythons on paper, that care and attention at that level that I'm putting in is required. But guess what, guys? Half of those drawers, when I open them, most days I look in there, nothing's going on. I pick the hide up, I lift the snake up, I put it down, I put the hide back, and I shut that drawer and I move on. When it's paper, the slightest little deviation, and you're cleaning out paper because it's gone all soggy and mushy, especially that newspaper, Ken.
Yeah, yeah, and then like it can be wet and stuck, and that's like the worst thing because you got to scrape it out. It's terrible. I keep my hatchlings on paper towels until they reach a certain size where they're not going to ingest cocoa, um, and I'm like every other day I'm changing it out because they're knocking the water over or they're making a mess. They feed more. Give me 1 second. So while I go seal the squeaky for my dog, Mike, can you give any advice to any first time breeders for ball pythons? Any pitfalls, anything to avoid?
Uh, any pitfalls, things to avoid? Well, don't breed spiders together. No, just listen. That make sure that you got your animals up to weight and that your temperatures are correct. And common thing is to lower your temperature a little bit on your males because sometimes when um, you don't get a good the eggs don't you get slugs and stuff. It's not because the male wasn't good per se, it's that the male's sperm was a little bit too warm because his enclosure was too hot. That's why it sounds strange, right, Ken? But I keep most of my breeder males in big enclosures.
Huh.
I don't keep my males in a rack system. I keep my males in big enclosures so they have the opportunity to move around and be in a cool place and not have to be in that enclosed environment. I think it keeps them cooler, and by keeping them cooler, it will enable them to to basically remove that variable that I need to worry about. Yeah, we want to make things as smooth as possible when we're breeding, and one of the ways to do that is to remove that issue and just
Right.
keep the male a little cooler. Yeah, because there's no harm, as long as you've got an ambient that's in the right sort of zone. It doesn't matter if you've got your hotspot at 89 or 87. It really doesn't.
Right, right. So you're given that like 89-degree hot spot, maybe the 80 on the cool, where the normal cool side is relative to hot spot in the tub, and then even further, if they want to cool down a little bit
But
more.
I don't. I try to keep my 87. Shout to my daughter who just sent me a WhatsApp and said that she's watching live. Hello, Princess. I love you. Yeah, so I'll tend to keep my males around 86, 87. I tend not to keep my males at 89.
Rudy, that's funny. But yeah, so I'm definitely gonna like consider something like that because eventually all my males will be in this rack behind me. It is a little smaller than where I keep my females, but I'm gonna move it to another room. So I'll just have the females and the hatchlings here, and then the males will be separate, and they only come over here to breed.
Which is good. Which is good to keep the males in a separate room. It's going to be beneficial to you because it will just benefit you. It will benefit you. It would benefit anybody who can do it, especially if you've got a male who basically will go off food because he's in the breeding room, even though he's not being bred, because he can smell the release of the pheromones and he's excited and wondering whether he's going to get a turn. And so he starts a fast just in case. And then you got a male that's just going to go off food anyway, you know.
Yeah.
So
that's the issue I'm dealing with. I have a male, the champagne pastel that I bred last year. I don't have plans for him this year. It just worked out that way. So he has been off food since I started pairing everything, and I'm like, well, you gotta put. I might put him in a different tub in a different room to see if I can get him to eat after a couple of weeks because he's in breeding mode, and I want him to eat. I mean, his body size is fine, so the other
especially if he's a proven male, because it's not just the hunch. He actually he knows what's going on, and basically he wants to know when his turn is, right?
Yeah. So I mean, the nice thing about having him being proven is that for my first year males that were little, took a while to figure out what was going on. I had the sperm plugs from him, so I was able to do the gross, pop him. Yeah, it works. By the way,
they work it out mostly. Play them some nice soul music, light a couple of candles, and I'd rather do that than start putting sperm plugs on
that was
on female backs.
That was quite gross the first time I had to do that.
Yeah.
I prefer
a little bit of Luther Vandross or some Barry White, some nice scented candles, and that normally works for me.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, definitely that first breeding season that I sort of stumbled into because I had a male that wound up being a female, so I lucked out. So like this has been the first year that I'm actually intentionally breeding, and it's a lot more to look at.
Yeah, that was last your first clutch.
I threw them together and they're locked up, and it happened. So it's like,
that champagne clutch was your first clutch, wasn't it, Ken?
Yep. And I was super excited because it proved that my female was.
The truth is, your first clutch, you'll never forget it. There's nothing like it. It sounds a bit cliche, but it's not like when you have a child, but your first clutch is like that feeling when you get your first child, or the time that you hit that animal that was the 1 in 64 chance, and you cut that egg and you see that you got it in your first year. That I basically, I in my first year breeding, I hit a blue-eyed Lucy with paradox markings on it. I hit the animal that I wanted to make, which wasn't that extravagant, but in my head in 2018 it was. Yeah, and I hit a 1 in 64 in another clutch. So I had all my dreams came true in my first season. But like I tell people, cutting eggs, baby snakes, and eggs being laid, it never gets old. It never gets old. It makes you, when I pull that drawer open and I see that that girl sitting on that clutch, it makes me draw breath to this day, Ken. I'm like, oh, and then I just shut the drawer again and I do like a little like this, and I'll be like, oh yeah, because for me it's still so exciting. I don't care whether it's my 10th clutch or my 70th clutch. It really doesn't matter to me. I've got a clutch that I cut a couple of days ago, and a couple of little heads were out this morning. I was like, oh yeah, a couple more days and you'll be out. And
yeah, I mean, I remember. So the girl, she was due to lay. I think it was like July 9th or whatever. I was at Jeremy Warfels at his barbecue, and I'm like, man, I hope when I get home, she lays. Of course she didn't. She wound up going the next Friday, but I was on hair down while she was laying the eggs, and I just happened to open and look and see, like, oh, there's an egg. And then everyone's like, I quit opening until let her finish, and then be like, well, you got to watch, wait, figure out when she's done. And so, once she was finally done, I said bye, filmed everything, made my video, me pulling that clutch. But that was like so exciting that, like, I'm sure my reaction was pretty, hey, it's finally happening. And then the longest 50 some odd days.
It's a little nervous. It's a little nerve wracking as well when it's the first time that you're going to pull a clutch. Your first time you're going to pick those eggs up and put them in an egg box, and when it's the first time, it's just like everything else in life. The more that you do it, the more that you repeat it, the more it becomes like a second nature. Right. It becomes simple. I'm that guy that I got enough clutches under my belt now that already. Actually, I haven't switched my incubator off because I still have a clutch in there. Once that clutch is out of that incubator, I will just switch it on, switch it off, and then I'll set all the boxes up with vermiculite and put the grate in and put the water in and get it how I want it, and then leave them in the incubator with the incubator off. I know my incubator takes an hour and a half to get up to warmth. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, mine's roughly about the same. So, when I see eggs, I'm going to go over, flick the switch. I already
leave her there for a half an hour, 45 minutes, and then put the eggs in there. They'll be fine. They'll be fine. Actually a little bit of fluctuation in the beginning is fairly normal, and a little bit cooler is and then a gradual heat up isn't going to affect them. Too hot is more of a problem than, if you had a thermostat malfunction, say you incubate at 90 degrees, that's on the button. I know people normally incubate a tiny bit under, but let's just keep it at 90 to keep the figures straight. Say you had a thermostat malfunction and all of a sudden for 48 hours your incubator was running at 93, and you would have a problem, right? But say you had a thermostat malfunction and your incubator was running at 87 for 3 days, you wouldn't actually have a problem. You'd just have a clutch that would take a little bit longer. And my advice would be, don't just turn it back up to 90, turn it up over a 24-hour period, right, so that you can warm those eggs back up, rather than smack them, back up.
Yeah, I had that issue until I fixed it. I shoved the probe in my tub, or the probe for the thermometer, not the thermostat. Because it's like, man, it's stupid hot. I'm like, what the hell's going on? Because it was reading like 92, but it was where I had the probe for the thermometer. It wasn't actually that hot, so I freaked myself out. My dog just made a gross noise. But once I figured out, getting my thermostat more dialed in, it was great. So having the
you don't have a gun, Ken?
I do. And if you don't have one of these, I recommend it. This one's
guys, that piece of equipment there is a must, because that thing will you just listen to what your gun tells you, because those things are what will tell you the truth. Don't watch those little thermostat thermometer things, those little digital things. You know how what I say about those, Ken, is that I'll set my incubator, okay, and I'll have 2, 3 of them in the incubator, and I'm not looking for the temperature on them to be correct. I'm just looking to where it sits, and then I'll glance at them daily, and I'll register in my head that their temperature hasn't changed, and that means that the incubator is running perfectly, irrelevant to whether it's 1 degree more or half a degree less. And I'm only worried about that they're the same, because I've already said it with my gun, and I know when my gun is correct, that's what they say. Right. So in answer to Ken's
Yeah, I
question,
had that up there for a while, but we got into talking.
yeah, no, sorry, I saw it up there, Ken. Ken, it's got nothing really to do with how far from locks. It's more how far from the from when the ovulation occurs. You know, if you get your lock lastminute.com, because it just worked out that way, you can have a very short period between a lock and eggs, because that would be the one and only lock. Maybe you bought a female mid-season, she was 1800 grams when you got her, and you slung a male with her, and basically, you know, hey, what's up,
Hey,
Ray? And so you can have that shortest period, but it's more to do with the lock is the lock, and then once you hit ovulation, that's where you can do your countdown from. Until you reach ovulation, then that is just, you know, it's just part of the process, right?
And sometimes especially if it's your first time, they can swell, right? So you get a swell, when they're building, and you can mistake that for an ovulation. And I've done that twice, where she looks bigger, but it's not that swallowed a Nerf football. When she
Well,
you can tell. So
you've got to read your animal, and you've got to be looking for certain sort of things that are going to lead you. Like, you're looking for that swell, you're looking for uh, you should find that an animal that is wanting to build for a clutch will have a more ferocious appetite, because she realizes that she's got a window to get the food in before she has to go on a fast. And you should see a more ferocious appetite for food for a female as she approaches that fast. You know that once you get a couple of locks on her, she should be taking that food quite well. She should be maybe looking for more food when you go to check, to make sure that the rodent's gone, instead of her being curled up at the back and sitting there like she was midweek. She's still at the front of the tub because she can smell that there's still rodents in the room. Yeah, that's going to tell. And Ken, I would always, like, I'd give my girls a small, like a 35, 40 gram rat on top of their rodent, on top of their normal rodent, because when they're that hungry at that time, it does 2 things. For them, it helps them to build up that fat that they need to have stored, so that they can go somewhere between, on average, 14 weeks without food. Somewhere between 12 and 16 weeks would be a fair. I've had some do it in 10, but most need 12 to 16 weeks. I've got one girl goes normally 22 weeks without food before she lays her clutch.
Yeah, that last year that was my concern. So I had the last lock roughly around this time, and she went off food, and she was, let's say, about 1,800 grams, give or take. So I was like, okay, she, you know, grew enough where I was comfortable. But as it got closer and closer, we get to the summer. She ovulates. And she has eggs. She would, I think, 1,400 when she laid, and 900 after. And I was like, oh, I say this thing looked like a deflated wind sock.
Half her body weight. She lost half her body weight.
She put everything into those eggs, and now she's, I think,
Well,
2,000 grams this season, and she's getting paired to a firefly pine. So it was just incredible how much she put into that first clutch and how much she, grew and rebuilt, within the year. That was quite impressive. But I mean, I was nervous for her because she did not look great after she laid.
That's a hell of weight loss, but
Yeah.
I think the one that I've got that goes 22 weeks, she's like a 3,000 gram female, and she normally really bulks up. She will eat ferociously when she's approaching that point. And I know her, and because I keep paperwork, I can kind of track her and look at her previous readings and know, right, this is what she's doing now, that we need to put the food in her now, because then she's going to stop. And she's never laid me a clutch with under 22 weeks. It's 22, 23, and 27 one year.
Yeah. Yeah. And once you get those records, and you know when you're, it's the right time of year, and that pattern, it makes it a heck of a lot easier.
And it makes you less stressed because you can look at the patterns, and it teaches you where the normal patterns are and how animals are so different. And that's why you have to pay attention to each individual animal, because animals are so different. The amount of food that they're going to need to reach that point is different with some animals. Some animals just want that one rodent every Sunday, and they never miss one, but they never want a second one. But they're still going to go on and lay that good, healthy clutch, but just the way they want it. Other animals, they'll eat ferociously, and then they'll spend longer off food. Other animals, it's just you have to be in tune with your animal and pay attention to what she wants. Yeah. And then you work with her. We're just here to facilitate them.
Yep.
How long after laying do you start pairing again? 7, 8
months.
7, 8. So I don't like to look at it in time, because to look at it in time, you're not paying attention to the food intake. So I don't look at it in time. I would say that I wouldn't start pairing a girl until she's had around 20 to 25 rodents. Right now, if you've got a seasoned pro girl that's just laid an 8-egg clutch, and she's laid a clutch every year for the last 3 years, no doubt within 3 or 4 weeks, she's going to be back on food, and you'll be able to offer that girl like an extra rodent every second week to top her up, so that you can have that girl ready to pair her in 6 months after. Because realistically, you want to if you want her to lay around the same time the next year, you need to give her 6 months to get back up to weight and put on some extra weight. And then you need to think that from when you start pairing her to when she lays that clutch, you want to have started that process at least 5 months before the date that she laid the year before. So if she laid on the 31st of July 2022, I would want to be pairing that girl the latest by January 2023.
Yeah, and that's weirdly enough lines up with you know, my female that laid last year. So hopefully she's going with a first time pied male. So hopefully you know, she goes. But that's the only thing we're pairing her with, because you know, she is het for pied and we want to hit that. We want to get some pieds.
Everybody loves a pied.
Yeah,
You know, whether listen, I don't breed for pied, Ken, because I can't tell you I don't like pieds. I love pieds, but I don't produce pieds because I find that pieds are restrictive, because you know, unless you've got certain lineup of genes that you're going to have a certain amount of white on the animal,
right.
and blah blah blah. But I love pieds. I've got pieds, and I would always have pieds in my collection, because pieds is one of those animals, when we first saw it, why we what spiked our interest, because it didn't look real. The first time you saw a pied ball python, you didn't think it was real, because how could it be like that?
Yeah.
What did that? Sorry, I missed that last comment. What did you have up on there?
Vern from 905 says, "This man, you, is a hidden gem amongst the community.
Oh,
You deserve mad respect." And I agree. I've learned so much from you in the past year, or however long it's been since we've been chatting. And you know, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on here, because you know, to get you out there to more and more people outside of, you know, this, I don't want to call it a clique, but there's a, you know, certain pockets of breeders that, you know, we all interact with each other. So to get you out more and more is going to be huge.
Well, we're nearly an hour in, Kent. The clock says 57 minutes, and we haven't mentioned it once. So you've kind of led it that way, that you know that yourself, that earlier last week I dropped the bomb on all the few people that are really interested, and announced that as of next Saturday, you guys can go and watch Kent. When you finish watching Kent, you can go and watch Celtic Bulls. And
Yep.
when you finish watching Celtic Bulls, if you've still got some energy left, you can come over and watch me and AJ and Gage and Ledka.
With Saturday Night Sit Down, is that what it's called?
Yeah, Saturday Night Sit Down. It's basically going to be like exactly what it says on the tin, Kent, that it's the four of us, that, you know, that me, Ledka, and AJ, we're connected through Wake and Bake. We've been doing Wake and Bake together for a while now. So we have that group chat. Gage is somebody that I met through Derek, sort of like the summer last year, and we kind of hit it off, and so these are people that I've spent months backstage and on private phone calls, just video chats, just talking, and actually we kind of decided, hey, you know, this stuff that we just talk it amongst ourselves, we should just put it out there for other people to hear it, you know, that yeah, the boys, I mean, I laugh and tell the boys, oh, you know, and they're like, well, you know, Mike, there people are coming for you. And I'm like, yeah, but, you know, I'm not doing it without you guys. Like, I'm not going to sit there and do some one-to-one, like, question with people. But we're going to structure the show. Initially, we're going to sort of introduce where we're heading and talk about how the show's going to be run, that we're going to try and cover things like feeding, breeding, all of that aspects. We'll be talking about humidity. We'll be talking about incubation and stuff like that. We'll be talking about the advantage of keeping records. We'll be doing live clutch cut-ins. We'll be doing clutch IDs and showing stuff like that. So, you know, and hey, here's the little bomb we're gonna drop. That the show's not gonna be a long show. The show's only gonna be like an hour and a half maximum. And no matter where we are, we're gonna cut it off. But then we're gonna have a more informal after party, which is either gonna be hosted on one of the co-hosts' channels. So it might be on Fred and AJ's channel. It might be on Ledka's channel, or it might be on Gage's channel. And basically, you know, we're going to have an after party. We're going to open that up to our close friends and have our close friends on. During the main show, we won't really have guests as such, but we will now and again have a featured person who will bring on, not to interview them per se, but more for them to showcase themselves. Somebody who, you know, who's part of our sort of like our wider family, you know, because you know how it is that birds flock together. And so now we kind of starting to build our own little community of people that, you know, we hang out with and stuff like that. You know, yourself, you know, you've been present yourself on one of those backstages with us yourself, Kent. So it's just guys just sitting about having a chill and talking snakes. So all we want to do is
I can do that all night, and I've done it all night.
Is to put that out there and try and be useful and help people. And if we can answer questions, if we can help people to improve the way that they do something or have a better strategy, yeah, then we're going to go ahead and do it, because that's what we want to do. You know, Kent, we've seen that within our community that not everybody sees eye to eye. Hey, that's fine. Let's concentrate on what we do see eye to eye on, those beautiful animals. Let's just concentrate on that, right? And if we concentrate on that, it's going to be all good, isn't it? It's going to be all good.
Yeah. So people in the chat, we're talking about education coming from you. So I want to, what we were talking about thermometers and temperatures earlier, I just want to, for anybody that has one of these, you can get your accurate reading by putting a cup of ice water and measure the temperature, and whatever it is away from 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 Celsius, that's your reading. So it should read 32 degrees in ice water. So that will give you your accurate reading, and you can have, you know, a thermometer to actually gauge, and you're not dealing with that plus or minus 5 degrees or whatever the heck it says on the label. So just want to put that out there. Anybody that has food safety experience should know that, but anybody else, it's a great tip. So, okay. Now for some more education from Mike. We were talking about feeding earlier, and you have a very, I don't want to say unique, but it's a very sound logic when it comes to feeding ball pythons. So you want to go over your feeding plans for
what you're asking me to basically run one of the episodes of my show now here. No, I'm kidding, Ken. So listen, I'm going to do it briefly, because we're going to break this down really, really in detail at some stage, but it might not be for a few weeks. I'll do me a favor though, Ken. Take me off solo, bro. Can't we just be next to each other? Please,
okay,
Ken.
Okay.
Thank you. So it's based on a couple of things. My first chain of thought where I came up with this was, you know, we're all taught to do things by somebody, right? And that's kind of how we all learn. And sometimes the things that we're taught, they're not really correct, but we don't know any different, okay? Because we don't know. Somebody taught us, and we take their experience as being the person we should listen to. So we follow what they tell us. Actually, sometimes that's not even their fault, because sometimes somebody told them badly, and then they're just passing on. So it's just a bad Chinese whisper, right? And so basically that bad information just keeps until somebody tells you, no, 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 don't do it like that. Anyway, we all got told to feed these little rat pup things, these little hairless rat things, these little baby rats. And I was sitting there one day and I thought to myself, well, where's it going to find that rodent in the wild? Because that rodent in the wild is sitting underneath a 160 to a 200-gram rat. And that 70-gram ball python ain't going to retrieve that little sweetie from underneath that rat. So he can't be eating that. So he must be eating, quote unquote, another type of rodent that, or a mammal that at sort of 15 grams is already out and about. So I just started my ball pythons on mice. And I start with, in the UK, because everybody predominantly feeds, throws and thawed, mice, corn snakes are very popular, and mice come in many different sizes. So we got a small, you've got the pinky mouse, then you've got a fuzzy, then you've got a hopper, then you've got a small, medium, large, extra large, and jumbo, right? And basically, this size here, the extra large, is the same size as a 40-gram weaned rat. Okay, so by starting it on a mouse that's 15 grams, I can build it up quicker by flipping up the size every 3rd week.
Yeah.
And then by the time the animal's been feeding 10 weeks, it's already ready to take a 40-gram rat.
Yep.
So within a very short period of time, once you get it on that 40-gram rat, it's just good. From there on, you don't actually need to worry about it because it will just continue to grow and grow and grow. And that you then just, when you think it's looking chunky enough, I always say that the rodent must be no bigger than the widest part of the snake when it's sort of dead. Like it's easier with a defrosted one because you can sort of see how long the body is, and there's no air in it. You know, a rat that is alive looks actually bigger than it really is because it's full of air. That, you know, when you have a defrost rodent, there's no air in it. The animal's much more solid and compact.
Yep. Yeah, and here for me, like I'm going between frozen thawed and live, and because one, I can breed my own rodents here. So it all depends on preference for and convenience for me. So, but yeah, I do notice a difference between a medium live rat and a medium that's in the freezer.
Well, I always work by weight, because although they have a size, most of the rodents that I purchase, they have a little piece of paper inside. The outside says medium mice, 16 grams. But inside there's a little piece of paper that says medium mouse between 15 and 18 grams. So they allow themselves like a little bit of a leeway, and you can select it's like with the small weans that they have to be a minimum of 30. No, sizes are the same. Right, exactly, Eric. That's why the sizes aren't the same. That's why I work with the weight, because for me, when I speak to me and Eric have had this conversation. I've had this conversation with Gage and other people, that when I talk to them about rodents, I talk to them about how many grams that rodent is. Because for me, like in the UK, they have a small weaned, large weaned, and then a small rat. A small wean is between 30 and 40 grams. and then a large wean is between 50 and 70 grams, and then a small rat is around 100 grams. And basically that you work like that, and for me, I will give that animal that 40-gram rodent for extra time, then it will get that 75-gram rodent for extra time, and then when it gets to about a year old, this is a female obviously, although a male gets treated about the same until that point there.
Yeah.
And then at that point there, the male will stay on a large weaned. And actually, when I start breeding him, I might give him a small wean because it will encourage him to stay on food if I'm giving him a smaller rodent, which makes him feel more comfortable and eating.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I like when we've talked about this, countless times, and I like this is why I want to get into breeding mice and ASF so I can follow that proper schedule, if you will, of how you feed.
I think ASFs are quite an advanced animal at about 16 to 18 grams. And that's what you're looking at. You want to look at what that ASF looks like at 16 to 18 grams. And when I say what it looks like, that a mouse at that age has got a proper bone structure, it's got proper teeth, it's got proper muscle, because it's in the wild, it's out foraging for food. In the facility, it's still got to be part of a pack and survive of its own sort of wits, yeah, getting food and being part of a pack. That's how it made it to be that size, yeah. So at the end of the day, that mouse at that age, that weight has certain characteristics and has a certain thing about it. If an ASF is a similar at the same weight, then use an ASF. It doesn't matter, you know.
So for reference, when an ASF starts to develop and have hair, fur, and it's not a pinky anymore, they're roughly about that size. So they're
but for me, do you know? I'd say to you, Ken, look at what a mouse looks like at 15 grams. If you don't know, I'll send you a picture when I take them out to defrost them later. All right, and then don't tell me it looks like that. Put it on the scales, and
right.
when you get it to 15 grams, then look at it and think, okay, at 15 grams, it looks about the same. Yeah, that's fine. I have a feeling that it would be quicker to get mice to 15 grams than it is to get ASFs to 15. I have a feeling. I know that from what and my knowledge of, hey, when we're doing the thing about rodent breeding, when we're talking about rodent breeding and the amount of rodents that you're going to need to feed a collection and what the ratios are, that episode I'll be at my lip zip like this, Ken, and I'll be sitting at the back like that, and I'll let the boys talk, because those boys all breed rodents, and I know absolutely nothing about breeding rodents. Okay, and they've bred both Norwegians, and they've bred ASF, so they will answer those questions for people that have those questions. I'm not that guy. I only know about weights, and I start with mice, and then I put my animals on Norwegians, and I don't have any problem with Norwegians. I've got animals that they only take multis, or ASFs as you call them, and the last one of them converted back onto rats this year, and I now technically don't need ASFs anymore. Oh, I've got one, but she's on a fast at the minute. I'll keep. some in for her. I find my animals grow just as well, if not better, on Norwegians as they do on ASFs, because I can feed them a more ASFs come up small. ASFs come up small.
Yeah, so they're gonna get as big as maybe a small rat, depending on what you define it. So that they're not. So you will never not be able to feed an ASF off in its life cycle. Whereas with
Right.
Norwegians,
I
you're gonna.
don't breed rats. I never got those humongous rats. The biggest rats I purchased. Let me put it to you like this, Ken. That this season I have 36 girls that are up to breeder weights that I'm pairing. Okay. A lot of them are first time mums. 12 of them are first year breeders. So I'm not expecting big numbers, because they won't all go because they're all first time breeders. But what happens is that I know that for me, I've got those 36 girls. Now, the biggest rodent I buy comes in at around between 95 and 110 grams. And I only defrost right even at the height of the season when I'm feeding the hardest because my girls are knocking on the door the hardest asking for the food. I only defrost 20 of those rodents. So I don't even defrost to give every adult female one of those every week. I don't even defrost enough for that. So if you get one this week, you might only get a 70-gram rodent next week. Yeah.
Yep.
But for me, that I have that control that I can select the size of the rodents very easily because there's like a industry standard over here that all of the rodent producers stick by a similar weight category. That means that they all look that size.
Yeah. So a lot of it, I do a mix of both. It all depends on what's available to you. Buying a live feeder is going to be expensive at a pet store. So find somebody local to you that, like me, breeds their own rodents. You're going to get a better price. And same for if you have your local rodent guy.
Why does Ricky think that I might have to do lives for the better of the snake's health?
I
Why
was gonna answer that or give my opinion on that after I was done talking about finding your local rodent guy because you're gonna get a better price for whatever.
Yeah, definitely. Because pet shops, they're super expensive, right,
yeah.
Ken?
Yep, and you don't know. At least with your rodent breeder, if you're going there to pick it up, you can see the facility. Where they're being grown up. At the pet store, you don't really know that much about. For all you know, it was born in that enclosure. So I just prefer, doing my own or buying from a rodent breeder. You can go for Rodent Pro or Cold Blooded Cafe, but you're going to pay more for shipping, and you need to have a larger collection to make it worthwhile to purchase. And
have like did that
you cut out for a little bit there, Mike.
Yeah, sorry, my son was trying to ring me. Hopefully he won't try again. He doesn't realize he's trying again. Here, babe, can you tell your brother to stop ringing me?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't waste the frozen thaw because I know what's going to eat them, and I thaw out less than the amount of snakes I'm feeding. So if I run out, then I can always thaw one out. And, I can always feed alive. or fresh killed, or something to make it work. But I definitely balance the stock on both sides. Yeah, this has been certainly interesting. We've been talking more about husbandry and general overall feeding, things like that, and we really haven't gotten into the nitty gritty of snakes. So I want to pivot because we all love talking about that stuff. So I want to get some ball python related questions as far as genetics before we get to the end of this, because we're almost at 90 minutes and it feels like we just started. So I mean, this is why I like.
I talked a lot in it. I said to the boys, "Listen, I'm sorry in it because I took a lot." Boys just laugh and they tell me, "That's okay, Mike. That's okay." The people want to.
I'm not complaining that I have this list of questions, and I think we got to the beginning, and that was it. So that's perfect.
Sorry.
Making my life easy.
I'll come on again for you, Ken. It's no problem.
So I just want to get your thoughts, because I ask everybody these questions when it comes to genetics and what you're working with. So what is your favorite incomplete dominant gene, and what's one that you want to add that you don't currently work with?
Well, my favorite incomplete. It's really hard because there's so many good ones. It's Eric's in the background now shouting, "Blackhead, blackhead!" So it's tricky. I think that for me, because, and I'm going to half answer, I think, the next question you're going to ask me in this, because it's why I will say it. I would have to say that one of the most important genes to have in your collection is spot nose. Yeah. And after that, yellow belly is also quite important, or gravel. I'm a big fan of gravel. I've got a really sexy looking super gravel, Kent, that I produced this year. And when I showed it to Ashley from Pip Stalkers and to Eric this morning, they were very impressed with it. And the reason I say that is because I predominantly breed for clown and for ultra male, and I believe that these animals are very beneficial to those recessives. So, though I would say I'll have to pick two, and it will be yellow belly and spot nose.
I think with spot nose, I don't have a single gene spot nose. I have it with leopard, and that, let me tell you, that like those two morphs were made for each other. It just
spot nose as a single gene animal is a sensation if you've got a good copy of it. And as for the gene that I want to work with, I actually recently, Team Ultramel. We're all Team Ultramel here anyway. You're amongst friends here, Eric. Don't worry, son. The one that I wanted to work with, I actually just purchased it recently. And it's a baby, and I won't be working with it until the season 2023-2024. Oh, look at that. John Feely's in the house.
And be sure to check him out later tonight. Who do you have on? Drop it in the chat. Go ahead and make you a moderator as well.
That's NR Mandarin.
Drop it in the chat. I screwed that up. I had the volume on.
Yeah, the one that my new gene for next season, Kent, is going to be NR Mandarin.
Nice. I seen some of the stuff KG is working with it, and he hatched something out. I think it was just a
well, I'll tell you who impressed me. They've got a really, and I never met the lady before last Friday's Hair Down Friday. Is it Pico Pythons?
Yeah, they were on towards the end, I think, and they had some issues switching around their cameras.
Yeah. Some absolutely stunning NR Mandarin pastels that the pastel and the NR Mandarin seem to complement each other so well that I actually asked them if they were supers because they were so orange. There you go. Both of them. The man himself, he just dropped John Feely's information in there.
All right. So if you, after we're done here, we're probably gonna end up around, half an hour from now. You can go over to Glenn's channel 419 and check out Ken from LMK. So you got ball python content and live streams pretty much until tomorrow morning. So have at it. My football season is over, so that's what I'm going to be doing the rest of the night is, chatting with everybody and enjoying these live streams.
What's your next question, Ken?
I was going to ask favorite recessive, but I think it's either going to be clown or ultramel. So
it's clown and ultramel. Here's the truth. I currently have 5 recessive. I'm actually going to stop. I've got a new recessive in, which was G-stripe, and I haven't yet produced animals from that G-stripe that are for the project to keep. And I've actually decided to remove the G-stripe again and keep to the 4 that I've got. Because for me, I'm that person that I believe that if you want to keep a small collection but keep yourself strong, you have to be a little bit more selective with how you work. So I chose hypo because I prefer hypo over desert ghost. Now I know there's people out there now falling off their chairs, and that's fine. That's okay because they are allowed to prefer desert ghost over hypo, and I'm allowed to prefer hypo over desert ghost. Apparently we're all different, so it's all good, right, Ken?
Yeah. Now I do think those two together, that's a bright snake.
Well, it may well be, but again, this is the difference between the UK market and the US market, and that for me, singles and doubles are adequate, and triples and quads are not really required, and your marketplace is going to be super small with the triples and quads because there aren't many people in the UK buying them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We know the pitfalls of trying to export animals because we've been trying to do that for a few months now to get the Barry gene over there to the States to work amongst the family. So we know the pitfalls of the export, and so for me, singles and doubles is where it's at. So I have hypo, I have pied, I have clown, and I have ultramel. I won't make pieds and I won't make hypos. I'll have hypo pieds, ultramel pied. I'll have hypo clown. I might even have hypo ultramel. But the only 2 recessives that I would do as singles is ultramels and clowns.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm predominantly clown at the moment because the clown project for me is something that I've been working on for the last 4 seasons. And the ultramel project, I'm starting it this year, but we start from a better positioning. So hopefully by the end of this season, I'm going to have double hair ultramel clown. I'm going to have double hair ultramel pied. I should have GHI Cine Het Ultramel, Leopard Het Ultramel. Next year we'll be doing yellow belly and gravel, so we can make an ultramel highway, so we can make a super gravel ultramel.
Yep. Yeah, and what's really cool is
ultramel pieds are absolutely sensational. Ultramel hypo pied. That's one I want to try and make.
Yeah, Pat from Dragon Soul has one of those, and it's in his it's a snake that's in his logo, and it's from Garrick to Myron. Is a fire male. Like, it's awesome. But yeah, I work with the same recessives that Mike does. So, it's kind of cool to talk about it, and how we're working things. I'm making double het ultra melt pieds hopefully this year. I'm buying a visual pied 100% head ultra melt girl. So I get a lip maybe a year ahead, hopefully. And hopefully I hit the right gender odds in my clutch. So, I could have I'm gonna hold everything back.
Well, I've got 4 locks. I've got 4 locks, ultra melter pied and ultra melter clown. I've got 4 locks already. So he's done his work. On it. The girls are proven breeders, both of them, and I know their pattern. And there's nothing in the way that they're behaving that makes me feel that they're not just going down that same road that I've watched them go down before. So I'm fairly confident, touch wood, and not sound like a big head, that those 2 clutches will land.
Yeah, I'm still fingers crossed. But again, since I am investing in that female, if my girl doesn't go this year, next year, I'll hit a male. If I hit a male, the timing will be perfect, I would think. Where the one I'm getting now will be almost ready to be bred by the time that male would be a breeding size. So, I'm trying to, hit it right where I'm not waiting. I don't have a male that's ready and I'm waiting another year for the female to be.
You know yourself that breeding ball pythons is like a little bit of a juggling act. That it's Jesus, you're working with living things. It's not like we're just putting plastic bricks together here. That there's so many variables. There's so many things that can make things different, that you just have to kind of treat everything individually, and go slow, and pay attention, and more often than not, if you follow. Listen, Ken, I've got the clutch I said to you that's still in the incubator. Okay, she laid that clutch on the 1st of December. Okay, she hadn't been paired since the middle of March. I knew she was going to lay, but it was so long from her last lock,
Wow.
yet she laid a 6 egg clutch. They've all gone full term, and they're all been cut, and they all look okay, and she had a last lock in the middle of March, and she laid her clutch on the 1st of December. So they're gonna kind of do what they want. We've just got to make sure that we keep their environment within a certain parameter to keep them comfortable, keep them happy, and not be stressed. Yeah. And make sure you change their water, make sure you offer them food, make sure you do this, and they'll do the rest themselves, right?
Yep. So I waited, 90 minutes to touch on this. So some people have mentioned they thought this was a real bearded dragon. It's not. It's a shirt from one of my local pet stores, Dart Products to Dogs. So I thought it was funny to wear it and make it look like I had a lizard on me. But but yeah, I mean, back to ball python breeding. It's so, just knowing your animals, it can help you out a lot. As you progress year after year, and you have your notes, whether it's a Husbandry Pro reptile scanner or a notebook, or whatever, however you track that stuff. I recommend tracking it.
Don't judge me.
I think I got a couple hours, and then the FedEx guy came with my rodent stuff, so that was fun. But yeah, I definitely listen to everybody, try to take everybody's advice, and then sort of take it to how it will work for me. There's certain things that are going to work in different
yeah.
climate, different system. So
Well, that's part of what we're going to do on the show as well, Craft. Is Ken? Is that we're going to sort of show that there's four guys here that we all live in a slightly different environment, one way or another. You know, Gage's environment is a super dry. He's got no humidity whatsoever this time of year. You know, I've got fairly high humidity this time of year, and that. And we just also want to show that there's more than one way of doing things. That we're going to show that we all work in a certain parameter, and we work in a certain way, and that's what you need to do. Is that you know, I remember when I first started with my son, and we'd go to 3 reptile shops on a Saturday, and I'd ask the same question to the 3 guys in the 3 shops, and my son would ask me, well, why do you keep asking them guys the same question over and over again, Dad? I said, because I want to see if they all give me the same answer. Because if I get people telling me the same answer, more often than not, that will be the right answer. If I ask 10 people the same question and 8 people tell me A, one person tells me B and the other person tells me F, the likelihood is that for the 8 people that told me A are probably going to be right. You know, you have to check it for yourself anyway, but it's there that you learn your parameters. And then once you start yourself, you know yourself, Ken, you get used to the way you do it and you fine tune it and you get better at it. Just like we said, pulling your first clutch is always nervy. Once you're 20, 30 clutches in, you do it like a robot. I see a clutch after I've done my little dance. I know I shut that drawer, I move a tub, I put it in the room, I fill it with water, I get a lid ready to put on that tub because I'm going to give her a bath. And then I'm ready to take the little video, take the pictures, lift her off her eggs, put her in her bath, put the tub, put the eggs in the container, in containers already preheated, stick it in the incubator, clean the tub, set it up, in she goes, out of the bath, back in there. It's like a little system and it works like that. But when you've done that 40, 50, 60 times, for some people over 150, 200 times, not me yet, but I'll get there one day, you know, that it becomes like a routine and it becomes easier. And as it becomes easier, it becomes quicker and just smoother.
yeah, I remember. I think, oh god, it was had to be getting close to midnight, so I was pretty tired. I was still super excited, but I remember sitting here. I have the egg box ready, everything's ready, and I'm like, okay, now I got to see, if these are viable. Okay, good veins. Now where is the damn embryo? Like, and I'm looking around and I'm like
Well,
texting everything. I'm like, what the hell am I looking for? Because I've never seen it in person.
here's the truth, Ken, that I'm not that guy, right? Because I'll be honest with you, I don't do any of that. If you were to ask, and this is this thing, isn't it? That I've got my way that I work, okay, and the way that I work is based on bits of information that I've picked up along the way. There's some things that I've tweaked and done for myself, and then other people tell me, oh, that's the way that person from back in the day used to think, and stuff like that. Anyway, but for instance, if you were to ask Brian Gundy or Marcus Jane about what you just said there, they will both tell you, however they lay, that's how they stay. Yeah. They lift the female off, they put them in the box, and they shut the box. You set your box up however you're going to set it up. I don't roll them. I don't split them. I don't do anything. I can tell you that how often do you give your girls the season off? Nicole, give me a second and I'll answer that for you. Uh, I can tell you, Ken, that I don't do any of that. I just take them out. If they're stuck together, they're stuck together. I don't bother to peg them. I just put them in. I only remove an egg if it's on the top and it's going to touch the lid of the box. As soon as I can get them so that they're not touching the sides or the top, they just go in like that, and then that's it.
Okay.
Nicole, in answer to that question, I don't give my girls a season off. If my girls want to take a season off, they will do. The reason behind that, Nicole, is that on 3 or 4 occasions, I have gone to give a female a season off, thinking, oh, I'll let her eat this year and not have a fast and let her build up weight for the following season. And then once breeding starts to occur in the room, if you don't give them a lock, they stop eating anyway. So now you get a female that you gave her a year off, and actually she spent 4 months off food. So it defied the reason that you gave her the year off for, because she didn't eat right through the season. Unless you're going to remove that female from the breeding room and put that female in a total different room where you might have a chance of her staying on food, then she's probably going to go off food if you keep her in the room and rest her. I would say that a female will take a year off when she chooses to.
Right, because I mean, if they're going to cycle anyway, biologically speaking. So whether or not you're
Yeah,
pairing, they're going to
right.
develop follicles and things like that, and there might, she might want to get that lock in to sort of trigger. I have to eat to build. So
It's like a yin and a yang, but what I've found is that if I give a female a year off, that all I end up doing is have a female that spends most of the breeding season off food anyway, because she's pissed because she didn't get a boy. She's angry with you now because they don't eat for the sake of it. They eat for a reason. Ball pythons that only do they don't have arms, they don't have legs, they're not into Ralph Lauren, and they're not really into Lamborghini. They're on this earth to eat so that they can procreate. That's what they're here for. That's the only thing they do, is procreate. They don't do anything else. They don't hang out and watch TV together or do any of that stuff. And to procreate, they need to have food in them.
yep, makes perfect
And if
sense.
they're not going to procreate, they don't need to eat, because they're not wasteful animals. They don't eat for the sake of it. You know yourself that ball python will go months without eating if it wants to.
Yeah,
Months.
and it can
All
be
of a sudden,
frustrating.
one day, you open that tub and it just goes bang, and you're like, why? What was wrong 2 months ago, a month ago, last week? What was the problem? All of a sudden, today it's okay.
Yeah, and my champagne male is that. And now I've realized, okay, he was ready to breed, and that's why he went off of food in previous years. And now it sort of makes sense as to what he wants. But I guarantee
Again,
you,
that comes with experience, Ken.
as,
That
as
when you watch these males go through their cycle, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Now, for me, I'm not really phased by a lot of it. I have rules that I stick to. That it's got to be a certain way. It's got to be a certain within this and within that, and then after that, you know, it it has to stop. I'll call a male off if he's been off food for X a time and he's under a certain weight. If he's over a certain weight, I don't pay attention to it, because I know that if he
Right.
started the breeding season at 1800 grams, I don't need to worry about him if he goes off food for 12 weeks. It's not a big deal. He's going to be just fine,
Right.
because I know I can then show you that male's paperwork and tell you that 3 weeks after I stopped breeding him, he went back on food and he ate solid up until I introduced him to the girls again. And as soon as I introduced him to the girls again, he locked himself off. So basically, he eats he eats for 7 months of the year and he doesn't eat for 5 months of the year.
Yeah, and once you know that, it's sort of a relief, if you will. It's the first
But
time that
he's
you get a ball python with a hunger string.
grams. He's 1800 grams, Ken. It's not a big deal,
Yeah,
really. Now,
right.
if you've got a 650-gram male, now you have to be a bit more aware that once that male hasn't eaten for 8 to 10 weeks, you need to stop breeding him. My ultra male's only got 3 weeks left in him, Ken, and then he has to be called off.
Yeah,
Whatever happened to them girls now, and he got the most. He got the clown. He got the pied. He got the GHI cine. He got the leopard. He got all good stuff. Yeah, but because he's a smaller male, if he doesn't eat in the next 3 weeks, he's going to get called off, and whatever happens, happens. Because I'm not slinging anything else in there.
yeah, and I have that with two the guys I'm breeding right now. So if this ivory doesn't eat, I think he's locked up with the bumblebee spark. But if not,
Oh, he's still locking. He's got no problem locking. He just doesn't want to eat. He just thinks this is like he thinks he's gonna be better at it if he doesn't eat. It's quite annoying.
yeah, and once with a smaller snake, you run into it can be an issue. But when you have, like you said, that 1800-gram male, he can go off of food for a year, and what's he going to be, 1200 grams, maybe? Even if he loses that much weight.
Probably be more than that. He'd
Uh,
probably be more than that. They know how to conserve energy as well. They know how to conserve energy.
so, yeah, I mean, with the smaller males, it's definitely a concern, and that's one of the things I'm being cognizant of this year. The ultra male is doing better than the ivory, so the ivory, if maybe one more go in a month, and then he's done. He's gonna go back to my body, and if I get my pumas, my yellow belly, everything clutch, great. If not, there's next year. So is what it is. I'm not gonna force a pairing just to have a clutch.
At the end of the day, that they'll do what they want to do
Yep.
anyway. That we don't have very much control technically. We can only carry out the process, and the rest of it's down to them. Carry out the process. Try to keep within a certain parameters, so that your husbandry is up to a certain. Your temps are in like this, and everything is like this, and as long as you stay within them. I bath my males after breeding to get rid of the smell of females, and then this my guys eat consistently. Maybe that's a good tip. I've never done that. That may well work. It makes sense. It does make sense.
Yeah. I mean, I'll try and I'll let you guys know. I'll comment. My results
Maybe I should.
on this
Maybe
video.
I'll give my ultra male a. It's too late for this week because it's just too late. But next week, maybe I'll give him a bath midweek if he doesn't eat this week, and I'll let you know 9:05 whether it works or not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely up for trying new things, different things. I've had
But that's the thing. All of those little flicks and tricks, those are those little things that you live by and you work with, and then you see if they're okay and you adapt them. And hey, listen, if somebody like Brian Gundy and Mark from Marcus Jane is telling me, I just pick the eggs up and however I find them, I put them in the egg box and they do absolutely just fine. And these guys between them, they've got more experience than most of us have had hot dinners. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Then that'll do for me, right, Ken? That will do for me.
Yeah, and I think it was Labor Day weekend. I had Brian Gundy on my show, and that was one of my favorite episodes I've ever done. One, because I was like in awe that he actually agreed to come on, but just to pick his brain and like the stuff that happened backstage was just incredible, and I'm extremely grateful that he came on my show. But yeah, there was a lot of advice.
The guy's a wealth of knowledge. The guy's a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah. And he's extremely nice. He puts his phone number out there, so I mean,
yeah. Bless
you
him.
have questions, he will help you. And the same goes for me and Mike. You have questions, you run into things, ask us. If we don't know, we can direct you to somebody that does know.
Well, hey, because this is actually going to be part of because what we're going to do is after we've just done a little rundown of everything, every week we're going to try and cover a topic of some description. Like I said, we're going to try to cut some clutches, show some clutches when they come. We might do a feature on one of the genetics that is part of the clutch that week. Because if we've got a clutch and it's got a nice genetic in it, we might stretch that and do a whole show on it and show that clutch and then do a feature on that genetic and stuff like that. Yeah. So we're going to be doing stuff like that. We're going to be doing like a Q&A at the end of each session. We're going to do like a 10-minute Q&A where people can and what we're going to do is that if anybody wants any topics covered, they'll be told, hit up that member of the team. If you want to do this, hit up that member of the team. And if you want any general advice, see which member of the team you think. Don't message me about rodents. Yeah. Don't message me about rodents because you're messaging the wrong guy, that hit up one of them. And the idea is that we technically going to leave ourselves open to be messaged and try to promote, the show this way and to help people this way by covering topics that people might raise with us as part of the lives. We're going to have it all covered. It's going to take a while, Ken, but we're going to get it all covered. So it's all documented.
Those of you that are joining in, Mike is going to have a show starting next week with Fred and AJ from F&A Balls, Ledka and Gage from Con Scientist. It's going to be on it every Saturday at 10 p.m. and they're going to cover
well,
exactly
8 p.m.
8 p.m. Sorry.
8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
So, I mean, it's going to be, like Mike was talking about, it's going to be a wealth of knowledge. You can ask your questions and, you'll get advice as best as it can be given. It's not like it was 20 years ago when we're not discussing these things.
It's just four older guys sitting about doing what we do anyway. Is having a smoke and having a chat about snakes. So it's not really anything like it's not really anything specific, but that people ask me a few questions. I like to help, and if we can document it and put it out there for people to get their own opinion, just use that and then make your own opinion. Don't take what we're telling you as gospel, because actually most of what people are putting out there is basically their opinion. Even those that try to sound like that they're right and listen to what I'm telling you, actually, technically, unless you're a scientist and you can show me some because I can start waving my finger a little bit, Ken, because I can start putting out books and show data and show how animals work on a system and how you can watch the flow of the animal. And I can show you not one animal, not two animals, but 10 like that. And I can show you that on 10 books and 20 books. And so I could sort of say a bit like, no, but we're not even saying that. We're saying disclaimer, we just giving you our opinion. Take what we've given you
and add it to your
and add it to what you're doing. And if it can help you to better what you're doing, that's brilliant. Then shoot me a message in a year's time and tell me, Mike, that worked. And you know what? Blah, 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 blah. Because that's how we all get better. Like what 905 put in there, that he baths the males. I'm going to try that. You know, people used to tell me, Ken, Mike, why do you watch so many podcasts? And I'm like, well, you know, for every 3 to 4 hours of content, you're going to find one little bit of information that is golden. But if you don't watch those 3-4 hours of content, you're not going to find that piece of information.
Right.
And so for me, like for instance, about a month ago, maybe around that, maybe my length of time frame is incorrect, but Bob Vu was on Brian's show, Brian's Samson Snakeatorium, and Bob Vu was talking about getting a female back on food, and if you didn't want to breed her, and he said just put the male in the snake bag and then put the snake bag in the tub. And I'd never heard it just said in that plain as day way like that, you know, and I've been doing this a little while now. And I was like, oh, how smart is that?
Yeah. And, you know, anytime Bob Vu is on anybody's channel, I am going to watch that because of the advice he gives.
That guy, a wealth of knowledge. He knows what he's talking about. He's been doing this a little bit longer than most of us, and so he should be more knowledgeable, right? Because experience is, once you get to a certain level, the rest of it is just based around experience after that, right?
Yep. So we've hit that 6 o'clock mark. I'm sure we could go on forever, but if you can hear in the background, my dog needs to go out, so I'm gonna, you know, as much as I want to keep this going, we'll have to do another one in a couple months, you know, just to pick your brain a little bit more. But I want to thank you, Mike, for coming on here. Be sure next week to check out his show, you know, later at night after this one. It's going to be great. I look forward to that because I do like those panels where we're just talking about, you know, everything we're dealing with or genetics. You know, pick a topic and we can just go, you know, off on a tangent and just talk about it. So, you know, I enjoy those things. I enjoy, you know, this was a great show, and I don't think we showed off a single animal, except for my dog. And that's what makes these things interesting. You have sometimes where you have these, and it's just like fire, you know, great snakes. And sometimes it's more for the knowledge, and I like the ones that are more for the knowledge, because, you know, we're talking more about things that everybody can experience rather than here's this awesome snake I produced or bought, and, you know, you might not have that, but it's nice to look at. You know, so I like to vary things up on this channel between shows like this and shows like where it's just show me your snakes. So we'll have to do one of those, you know, when you're on again. So,
well, I don't really. I mean, I've got some interesting snakes. I don't really have those awesome snakes in the sense of I don't have those pretty powerful visual recessive animals that some people have got. You know, yeah. I've got some interesting looking animals, but I don't have that something pie, that something clown. I don't have those animals, Ken. Yeah, but you know, it's no problem for me. I can talk. I can show animals. You know me, Ken. Like you said, I can go for hours. I can talk to the cows.
And you know, I like to keep this in 2 hours because, you know, going longer, you know, when I have the dog and, you know, it's dinner time.
No, well, we've just gone over, so
So we've
we're
gone
right.
over 2 hours. So I want to thank everybody in the chat for sticking with us for the
Yeah,
whole
thank
time.
you, anybody that's here.
Thank you.
Sorry, I
Thanks
didn't
again.
read it. I don't have the chat on my phone, so it's quite hard to follow who's there, and the comments are moving fast, and
Yeah, I've been trying to post them up here, but again, thank you everybody for tuning in. I don't have my guest locked down for next week. Hopefully I get that figured out, and I'll make an announcement. You know, towards the middle of the week, because I like to let this live sort of stew and people can watch the replay. And I want to promote this one before I move on to the next one. Just let it sort of gain some more traction. So thank you again for tuning in. Go check out Ken from LMK over there on Glenn 419 Morphs channel. Yep, right here. So thank you, Vern, for dropping that in the chat. Go over there, watch more ball python stuff. Thanks again, and we will see you next time.
Take care, guys. Peace.